Okay, guys, so welcome back to Upstream Health with Ify. All right, so how should we consume our carbohydrate to avoid insulin resistance? So, especially if you have if you're managing polycystic ovarian syndrome, if you're overweight, or if you're trying to maintain a healthy weight, if you are pre-diabetic, or if you're already diabetic, or if you have high blood pressure, or if you have high cholesterol, or even to stay healthy, to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Everybody needs to implement this, okay? Not just for those who have a specific condition. So everybody needs it. So that way you are building a reserve for you in the future. All right, you might say, oh, I'm healthy, I don't need all that. I'm on a keto diet, I'm a vegetarian, I don't need to hear this. You really need to hear this, okay? So let's start. How do you consume your carbohydrate to avoid spiking your insulin? So if you didn't watch that video that I just posted about the chaotic environment that insulin resistance um, produces, I need you to go watch that video. The video I talked about, like I used the illustration of the ER emergency room and the worker. So go watch that video so that you can understand what insulin resistance is doing to our body. So number one, let's look at carbohydrate. Okay, carbohydrate food. What is carbohydrate food? Carbohydrate food. All right, so we all know what's carbohydrate food. Like from where I come from, carbohydrate food is our staple food. Like there is no, I don't know, no like Sunday that we don't eat rice. Okay, so how you eat your carbohydrate matters. So I'm gonna go cultural a little bit more because we all have different cultural background. So if you are eating your carbohydrate, what quantity do you eat? Like growing up, I know we ate a lot of rice. The rice in a big bowl with our protein, the meat with the protein, and then the stew. Sometimes we put a little bit greens there, the pumpkin leaves around it. But growing up as a kid, I can't remember. I think we just ate white rice and the stew and the chicken. So how you eat it? Right from now, if you have children, I think you should be watching this and begin to implement it. Do not give only rice and the protein and the stew. They need vegetables. So that comes to me saying, never eat your carbohydrate naked. Never have a naked carbohydrate, which means do not just eat a slice of bread with something that doesn't have fiber. You need fiber. Like the reason why this is very important is when you eat a naked carbohydrate, which means you're eating just carbohydrate on its own with nothing like fiber, or let's say protein, vegetables, especially fiber, you're gonna be spiking your insulin, right? So when you eat naked carbohydrate have high glycemic index. What is glycemic index? Is how much the carbohydrate food you're eating can spike your insulin or the glucose at the very few minutes or even hours that you eat it. So if you eat a naked carbohydrate, your insulin spike is gonna rise, it's gonna shoot up right away, or the glucose. So remember, when you're in, once it's like opening up a tap when you eat a naked carbohydrate. So it's like opening up that tap, and that surge of glucose into the blood will cause your pancreas to release, boom, the insulin spike, and your cells, believe me, are not happy about that. That causes insulin spike. So always eat it with if you're gonna eat that carbohydrate, make sure it's a high fiber carbohydrate, and then you're eating it with some vegetables. That's very important. Never eat your carbohydrate. Don't eat just carbohydrate meal. Make sure there's protein in it, there's vegetable, or you're having it with some fruits or high fiber diet. Okay, number two, All right. Number two, which I believe we all know, processed food, processed carbohydrate, or whole carbohydrate. So make sure you do away with processed carbohydrate, or you're slowly weaning yourself off processed carbohydrate. Okay, no processed carbohydrate. If you're still eating like the fried foods, the French fries, food that are fried in, or deep fried foods. You can bake your potatoes, okay, instead of deep frying it. Okay, processed food, the cakes, the sweets, the sodas, the things with that the nutrients have been removed completely, like the white rice, the nutrients have been removed, no fiber in white rice. So those processed food also can spike your insulin or spike your glucose and cause insulin resistance. So stay away from processed food. Number three is, we have simple carbohydrates, we have complex carbohydrates. So simple carbohydrate also are more like the processed carbohydrate, like the sugar, the sodas, the juices are simple carbohydrate. The sweetness, stay away from those and go for complex whole carbohydrate. Things that are, I keep saying, 99.9% closer to its real nature, the way it was created by God. Yeah, that's how I put it. All right, stay away from those things that has been processed and they've become so simple and they've been robbed off of their nutrients and fibers and vitamins. They're like just empty calories that are also harmful to your health. And number four, I think I lost count, so let me go. The next one is, never drink your carbohydrates. If you watched my video where I talked about smoothies versus juicing, all right, I did tell you guys that smoothies are healthier than juicing, because juicing is more like concentrated sugar, especially when you're making the juice from very sweet fruits. So if you want to prevent insulin resistance, do not drink your carbohydrate. Eat it whole, or steam it, or you're cooking it. If you must make smoothie, make sure you're making it with a lot of healthy carbohydrate. You can get starchy vegetables, like I demonstrated in my video. A lot of your vegetables can be starchy. Proteins has starch in it, and so make sure you're going for fruit options, right, that have fiber in it and less starch. Okay, when you are doing your smoothies, do not juice carrots, beets, and let's say pineapple. You're juicing that and you're drinking that. It's concentrated sugar that is gonna spike up your insulin. Even though you're gonna say, oh, I'm having natural fruits, that's gonna spike your insulin. All right, so that, do not drink your carbohydrate. Eat it, steam it, cook it. If you must have smoothie, make sure you're having healthy vegetables included, not just fruits that is high in fructose, and the sugars can spike your insulin. And then the next one is the quantity of carbohydrate you're having. So it depends. Like I said, all carbohydrates are not made equal. Okay, some of them have high glycemic index, like I explained, how much it increases glucose, or how much your body absorbs in a very few seconds. So a lot of carbohydrate, such a carbohydrate, have very high glycemic index. So those ones you should have in a lower quantity. So let's say you're gonna have potatoes. Let's say the white potato, which I know is very high in glycemic index, which is a carbohydrate. You can have just one and make sure you're having it, like I said, a lot of vegetables. And a lot of fiber, because remember, your vegetables are not only high in fiber, they are high in minerals, high in vitamins, including the fiber That way the insulin spike, that way the insulin spike is avoided because of the fiber in the smoothies. Okay, all right. And then the next one is the order that you have your meal. Okay, say you have a bowl of food, you have carbohydrate, let's say you have rice, you have your meat, you have your, so this is a very tricky one. So let's say the bowl, because I know we actually do the reverse. So let me give you guys let me put it out there to you guys. Say you're given a bowl of rice, okay, and you have a chicken in it, and then you have the salad by the side and the stew. Tell me which one you're gonna start eating first. For me, culturally, or how I grew up, believe me, I'll start eating the rice and the stew. We usually eat our protein last. And sometimes with the rice, we eat the rice and mix it up with the vegetable. But the meat, the protein is always the last. But guys, studies have shown that when you're given a carbohydrate food, a protein food, the vegetables, make sure you're eating the non-carbohydrate food first. If you consume the carbohydrate food first, your insulin is gonna spike and also lead to insulin resistance. So studies have shown that, which was so, I'm like, oh, how? And then when I read into it more, I found out that, remember, when you eat carbohydrate or when you consume carbohydrate, the digestion starts immediately from your mouth, from the saliva, from the enzymes in the mouth. So studies shows that you should consume the non-carbohydrate food, which is like the protein, which the salad. So when you're giving that bowl of food, like I just said, you eat the protein and the salad first. Okay, and when you're done, then you can eat the rice and stew if you're from Nigeria like I am. So you eat the protein and the salad first, okay, and then consume the rice and stew. Okay, so that way you don't spike your insulin and have what we call the insulin resistance. So the other matters. Okay, I'm sure some of you are asking, should I mix it up? Yeah, if you have that, if you don't have option of eating it separate and you want to mix it up, you can. All right, but make sure you're never having your carbohydrate naked, like I just explained. And the next one is when you make another, studies also have shown that when you want to consume carbohydrate food, if you want to prevent insulin resistance, you can cook the carbohydrate food, cool it, either freeze it maybe for 24 hours and then warm it up and eat it. Yeah, I read it and I'm like, oh, how come? And the studies explain that when you cook a carbohydrate food, allow it to cool and then freeze it or refrigerate it and then warm it up again like after 24 hours, that most of the carbohydrate in that food becomes resistant starch, which means it's not converted to glucose. So your body is gonna bypass, or that food is gonna bypass that area of being broken down to glucose, and your body doesn't consume it, which means your body is gonna see that carbohydrate food as fiber. Remember, fiber, we don't break it down. It goes straight to the gut for the bacteria to use. So when you cook your carbohydrate food, allow it to cool, and then you can freeze it or refrigerate it and then warm it up again like after 24 hours and eat. That food becomes, the starch in that food becomes resistant, which means your body is not gonna break it down to glucose. That's another one that I read, and I'm gonna read more into that. And then the last one again is when you're consuming carbohydrate, consume it with acidic food like apple cider vinegar, lemon. Like if you have water, like if you're about to eat a carbohydrate food or your meal, make sure you have like the water, not just plain water. You're squeezing some lemon juice into that water, or you put in some some spoons of apple cider vinegar. Like here I have my apple cider vinegar. So make sure you have like your water, spice it up or flavor it up with lemon juice or apple cider vinegar like I have here. So, and consume that before you eat your meal. So I think that's one that's pretty easy that you can do if you're going out for work or going out. You have your water bottle, squeezing some lemon juice inside of it, or putting some tablespoons of apple cider vinegar and have your water. That way, if you consume any carbohydrate food after that, it's gonna slow the activities of the enzymes that break down starch to glucose. So when you consume acidic water, or when you consume this water that you have lemon or apple cider in it before you eat, what happens is that acetic acid, it's gonna blunt the activities of the enzymes that break down starch into glucose. So that way your body absorbs this glucose slowly and steady. Remember, when you eat, the goal is when you eat a carbohydrate food, insulin release into the bloodstream and glucose release also, it's supposed to be slow and steady. All right, slow and steady, like I demonstrated in the emergency room. It should be slow and steady so that the staff or the cells don't get worn out. All right, so slow and steady. So consume your water, put in apple cider or lemon in your food. And the study also showed you can consume fermented food also, like yogurt, sauerkraut. Fermented vegetables can also help with increasing insulin sensitivity. So I believe I covered a lot of that. And okay, the last one, not the last completely, based on the studies that I did, the quantity of carbohydrate, it's very important. Okay, so the grams of carbohydrate you should be having should be at about, let's say, 20 to 100 grams per day. I know that the regular carbohydrate everyone should be having should be about, I think, 250 to 300 grams. That's about 50 to 65% of the calories of food you're consuming every day. That's about 250 to 300 grams. But if you want, that's a lot. So if you are on a weight loss journey or you want to prevent insulin resistance, you should cut down the amount of carbohydrate you're having. So that's a low carbohydrate meal. Like people go on keto diet where the grams of carbohydrate they consume is a little more, very less, like about, I think 20 to less grams of carbohydrate per day. All right, so you can start from 50 or to 100 minimum to compared to other sources of food. So going low carbs is very important, okay, when you compare to amount of protein and the fats you're having on a daily basis. Okay, so this is a rundown of what I have for you guys on carbohydrate, so that you can understand that carbohydrate plays a huge role in insulin resistance. And if you have any question, please to my Instagram page and send me a message, and I'll always come out here to answer your questions. Okay, so do have a blessed rest of your day. Bye bye.